Hey guys, tonight we are going to get so incredibly, ridiculously wealthy that we accidentally ruin several national economies just by being generous. Your story begins in the early 14th century, in the heart of the Mali Empire, a place so drenched in gold that the dust of it coats the sandals of children playing in the streets. The air is thick with the smell of sun-baked earth, spices from distant lands, and the faint, metallic temps of unimaginable fortune. You're not the king, of course. Let's be realistic. You'd probably get a nasty case of sunstroke within the hour and be traded for a block of salt. Speaking of which, that's considered just as valuable as gold here, so maybe it's not such a bad deal. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's always nice to know who's drifting off with me. And while you're at it, feel free to drop your city and what time it is for you in the comments. It's fascinating to see where everyone is listening from. Now. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sun is a physical weight here, just south of the vast Sahara. You're standing in a marketplace in the capital city of Niani, a sprawling city of reddish-brown mud brick buildings that seem to have grown right out of the soil. It's not the famed Timbuktu just yet. That city is still a modest provincial town, its golden age yet to be born. Here in Niani, the air hums. It's a low, constant thrum of commerce, of life, of power. Camels groan under the weight of their cargo. Their complaints a gravelly bass line to the high-pitched chatter of merchants haggling in a dozen different languages. You see men from the north, their faces weathered by desert winds, carefully unloading massive, rough-hewn slabs of salt. They guard these grayish blocks with the same intensity that the southern traders guard their pouches of gold dust. Here, one does not simply buy a snack. You might trade a pinch of gold dust, carefully measured, for a handful of dates. For smaller purchases, you'd use cowrie shells, those small, glossy white shells that clink musically in your palm. It's a strange feeling to hold a currency that was once a home for a sea creature from an ocean thousands of miles away. It makes the world feel both immense and interconnected. The empire you're standing in is a titan of its time, stretching over 1,000 miles from the Atlantic coast deep into the Sahel, its foundation. Its very lifeblood is the trade of two simple commodities: salt from the north, gold from the south. The empire sits squarely in the middle, controlling the flow like a heart controls the circulation of blood. The man in charge of this vast kingdom is not yet the legend we're here to discuss. You might hear whispers of the current Mansa, or Emperor Abu Bakr II. A dreamer, they say. He wasn't content with ruling the land. He was obsessed with the sea. Historians still argue whether his story is a factual account or a grand allegory. But the tale told by the griots, the official oral historians, who are a walking, talking library of the empire's past, is that Abu Bakr equipped 200 ships, and then 2,000 more, to find the edge of the Atlantic Ocean. He provisioned them with years of food and water, and sailed off himself, handing the reins of power to his deputy, a man named Musa. Abu Bakr was never seen again. And so, by default, this deputy, this Mansa Musa, inherited the throne. You can imagine him in his palace, a structure more imposing and grand than any other, but still made of the same humble earth as the homes of his subjects. He is now the guardian of the Bambouk and Bor goldfields, the richest sources of gold in the known world at the time. Europe, at this point, is comparatively poor in grappling with its own internal squabbles. They mint their coins from the trickles of gold that make it across the desert, hearing only fantastical stories of the Golden Kingdom to the south. They have no idea of the scale. No one really does. Here, gold is an abundant natural resource. It's used for trade, for decoration, for showing status, but it's not worshipped in the same way it is elsewhere. It's just there. A fact of life, like the heat of the sun or the seasonal rains. This casual relationship with a substance that drives men in other lands to madness is perhaps the most telling detail of the Mali Empire's power. It's the quiet confidence of a man who owns the well in a world of thirsty people. There's no need to shout about it, for now. Asterisk, so there you are, in the court of a man who has inherited the world's largest supply of gold from a predecessor who was, to put it kindly, more interested in nautical adventures than terrestrial administration. Unlike the last guy, who was seemingly trying to find the ocean's secret waterslide exit, Mansa Musa is a devout Muslim. And for a devout and powerful Muslim king, there is one journey that looms larger than all others: the Hajj, the pilgrimage, to the holy city of Mecca. It's one of the 5 pillars of Islam, a sacred duty for every Muslim who is physically and financially able to undertake it. For the ruler of a vast and wealthy Islamic empire, it's not just a duty, it's an expectation, a spiritual and political Super Bowl, all rolled into one. Asterisk, you can almost feel the weight of this decision settling on his shoulders. This isn't like planning a weekend getaway. Your last road trip probably involved a frantic search for a working phone charger and an argument over the playlist. Mansa Musa's trip would involve moving a medium-sized city across 2,500 miles of the most inhospitable terrain on the planet. But the motivation runs deeper than just ticking a box on a list of religious obligations. Historians still argue whether Musa's primary motivation was pure religious devotion or a masterful stroke of international politics, disguised as a pilgrimage. The truth is likely a complex blend of both. Think about his position. He's the head of an empire that is, to the wider world of Europe and the Middle East, a kind of myth, a land of gold somewhere south of the Great Desert. They know it exists, because its gold trickles into their economies, but they don't know it. They can't picture its cities, its culture, its power. It's an abstraction, a rumor with a monetary value, a grand hajj done on a scale that nobody has ever seen before would change that. It would be the ultimate announcement to the world, a declaration that the Mali Empire was not some backwater resource deposit. It was a center of civilization, power, and faith, helmed by a king of immense piety and, more importantly, immense wealth. It was a coming-out party on a continental scale, asterisk, and then there are the practical benefits. The journey would take him through other major centers of the Islamic world, most notably Cairo, the largest and most influential city of the era. This was a chance to forge diplomatic ties, to observe how other great powers were run, and to establish trade relationships that weren't reliant on the slow, plodding caravans of anonymous merchants. He could essentially lead the world's most extravagant trade mission. He also knew that his empire, for all its wealth, lacked some of the refined scholarship and architectural prowess of the older Islamic states. This trip was a recruitment drive. He planned to bring back the best and the brightest, scholars, architects, poets, and scientists who could transform his cities into world-class centers of learning and culture. He wasn't just going to Mecca. He was going shopping for a golden age. Asterisk, the preparations begin, and the scale is difficult to comprehend. It starts not with camels and supplies, but with information. Scribes are set to work, drawing maps based on the knowledge of generations of traders. Messengers on swift horses are dispatched to the far-flung provinces of the empire, carrying the Mansa's decree. Governors are instructed to gather tributes, to prepare soldiers, to ready their communities for the king's passage. The griots, those keepers of history and masters of the spoken word, are tasked with a crucial job, composing the epic of the journey before it has even begun. You can imagine them in the courtyards, their voices rising and falling as they craft verses that will turn this logistical nightmare into a divinely ordained quest. It's a brilliant piece of public relations, ensuring that every subject of the empire, from the highest noble to the lowliest farmer, understands the monumental significance of what their king is about to do. It frames the crushing taxes and levies required for the trip not as a burden, but as a contribution to a glorious, shared destiny. It's a story first, a journey second. Asterisk the day finally arrives. The air outside Niani is thick with a nervous energy, a shimmering haze of dust and anticipation. Imagine a modern music festival, the day the gates open. Now multiply that crowd by 20, remove the electronic music, and replace it with the lowing of cattle, the bleating of goats, and the guttural protests of 10,000 camels being saddled. This is the staging ground for your journey. It's not so much a caravan as a mobile nation-state getting ready to roll. You are part of what chroniclers of the time, who were admittedly prone to a bit of exaggeration, would later describe as a procession of 60,000 people. Even the most conservative estimates are staggering. It's a human river, and it's about to flood the desert. Asterisk leading the way is the vanguard, an army of thousands of soldiers. They are not just here for security, though the journey is perilous. They are a statement. Their iron-tipped spears catch the morning sun, and the intricate patterns on their leather shields speak of a dozen different vassal tribes, all united under one Mansa. They are the empire's business card, a walking, marching display of its military might. Behind them, the procession unfurls in a seemingly endless line of organized chaos. There the court officials, the scribes with their precious inks and papyrus, the royal physicians with their chests of arbs and remedies, and the griots, who are already humming the first verses of the epic tale you are now living. Asterisk, and then there is the king's personal entourage. It's here that the spectacle tips from impressive into the realm of the truly absurd. You see a column of 500 people, all dressed in fine Persian silk. They march ahead of the king himself, and each one carries a staff made of solid gold, nearly 5 pounds of it, gleaming so brightly it almost hurts to look at. This is not a security detail. This is decoration. These are the heralds, announcing the Mansa's presence to the vast, empty expanse of the desert. A rather confident gesture, when you think about it. It's like hiring a full orchestra to play your entrance music as you walk into an empty library. Asterisk, then come the camels. Thousands upon thousands of them, the true workhorses of this endeavor. Most are laden with the practical necessities, colossal bundles of food, massive water skins that bulge like sleeping creatures, tents, textiles, spices for trade, and everything else needed to keep a city alive for a year. But then, you see a special train of about 100 camels. These animals walk differently, with a slow, ponderous gait, because each one is carrying a burden of pure, unadulterated gold. Not coins, not jewelry, just the raw, heavy, beautiful dust and nuggets packed into sturdy leather bags. Each camel carries between 200 and 300 pounds of it. Your brain struggles to process the number. It's a moving treasury, a portable fort knocks on 4 legs. It's so much wealth that it ceases to look like money and instead just looks like a very specific heavy type of sand. Today's airline baggage fees for that much extra weight would probably bankrupt a small country all on their own. Asterisk, and somewhere in the middle of it all is Mansa Musa. He does not trudge through the dust with everyone else. He rides a magnificent horse, surrounded by his closest advisors and bodyguards. When he tires of that, he can retreat to an ornate palanquin, a covered litter carried on the shoulders of strong men, where he can rest and consult his maps, or his Quran. His wives and the other senior women of the court have their own litters, their own attendants, their own bubble of regal calm in the midst of the bustling procession. The logistics are mind-boggling. An army of cooks prepares meals. Water-bearers move through the ranks. At night, a tented city springs up, complete with a mobile mosque that is assembled for daily prayers. The king, it is said, is determined not to miss a single one. This is, after all, a pilgrimage. A very, very well-catered pilgrimage. As the sun climbs higher, the signal is given. A horn blast, deep and long, echoes across the savannah. The front of the line begins to move, a slow, inexorable crawl northward. The golden river is finally in motion. Asterisk, the lush greenery of the savannah is a fading memory now, a green smear on the southern horizon. Before you lies the Sahara, the bare Belama, the sea without water. The initial novelty of the journey, the festival-like atmosphere of the departure, has evaporated under the relentless sun. It has been replaced by a quiet, trudging rhythm. This is the daily grind. The world has been reduced to a palette of beige ochre and the vast, empty blue of the sky. Your life is governed by the sun. You wake in the deep, cold blackness before dawn, the sand frigid beneath your sleeping mat. You move in the gray twilight, packing up, saddling animals, trying to get miles behind you before the real heat arrives. Asterisk, by mid-morning, the sun is a merciless white disk. The heat isn't just in the air, it radiates up from the sand, a physical force that cooks the soles of your feet through your sandals. The landscape shimmers, creating phantom lakes on the horizon that your thirsty mind desperately wants to believe in. This is when the entire caravan halts. To move in this heat would be suicide for both man and beast. Tents are erected, creating pockets of shade where thousands of people simply lie down and wait, conserving every drop of moisture, every ounce of energy. It's the world's most boring and most necessary siesta. The only sound is the wind, a dry, whispering hiss across the dunes. It's a silence so profound it feels loud. Asterisk, you learn to live with the sand. It's in your food, a constant gritty texture in your flatbread. It's in your water, which you sip sparingly from a warm goatskin bag. It finds its way into your clothes, your hair, the corners of your eyes. At night, the temperature plummets, and the desert that tried to bake you alive now tries to freeze you. You huddle with others around small fires, fueled by the precious little scrub brush or dried camel dung carried for this purpose. The sky, at least, is a reward. With no city lights for 1,000 miles, the stars are an impossible spill of diamonds, so bright and close you feel like you could reach up and scoop them out of the heavens. Asterisk, to navigate this ocean of sand, the caravan relies on Tuareg guides. These are the legendary blue men of the desert, so called because the deep indigo dye of their robes and turbans often rubs off onto their skin. They move with a quiet confidence that is both reassuring and unnerving. They don't use maps. They read the land itself, the shape of the dunes, the position of the stars, the texture of the wind. To you, it's a terrifyingly uniform landscape. To them, it's a network of invisible roads and signposts. Their survival skills are a constant source of quiet amazement. They know where to find the scant, bitter vegetation that a camel can eat. They can predict a sandstorm hours before it arrives, a sudden change in the wind's song that you would never notice. Following them feels like an act of pure faith. Asterisk while you're rationing your water. Mansa Musa's experiences, shall we say, a little different. His is the ultimate glamping expedition. His massive silk tent is an oasis within the oasis. You might see servants digging deep into the sand, not for water, but to create a kind of natural refrigerator. A deep pit where clay pots of water and even preserved fruits can be kept relatively cool. It's a simple but ingenious bit of desert technology. Historians and archaeologists still debate the exact route Musa's caravan took, as the desert sands have long since erased their tracks. But every potential path was a brutal test of logistics. For the king, however, it's just a change of scenery. He holds court, listens to his griots, and performs his daily prayers on plush carpets laid out on the sand. Asterisk the journey is punctuated by terror. One day, the sky turns a sickly yellow-brown. The Tuareg guides begin shouting, and a frantic energy grips the camp. It's a sandstorm. You huddle behind your camel, wrapping your face in cloth, as the world disappears into a screaming, scouring vortex of sand. It can last for hours, and when it's over, the landscape has been rearranged. Dunes have shifted. Landmarks have vanished. It's in these moments you realize how fragile this moving city truly is. A caravan that took a wrong turn, missed a well, or was caught unprepared by a storm could simply vanish, swallowed by the desert, leaving nothing but a rumor for future travelers. And so you trudge on, day after day, week after week. The sea of sand seems endless, until one day the guides point to the horizon. It's not a mirage, it's a smudge of green, an oasis, the promise of unlimited water. The first major stop on the way to civilization. The first real sign that this ocean does, in fact, have another shore. Asterisk after what feels like an eternity in a world of sand and sky, you begin to notice a change. It starts subtly. The air, for the first time in months, carries a hint of moisture, a faint, loamy smell of damp earth. The horizon, once a razor-sharp line, now has a soft, greenish-blue haze clinging to it. Then you see it, a line of impossible green, the Nile Valley. It's a shock to the system, a slash of vibrant life painted across the canvas of the desert. Palm groves, fields of grain, and the silver ribbon of the river itself feel like a hallucination after so long in the monochrome wilderness. Your journey across the sea of sand is over. You have arrived in Egypt. Asterisk as the caravan approaches the outskirts of Cairo, the reaction is one of stunned disbelief. The people of Cairo are used to traders and pilgrims. Their city is a global crossroads, the beating heart of the Islamic world. They've seen rich men. They have not seen this. Your procession isn't a caravan. It's an invasion of wealth. The sight of thousands of soldiers, hundreds of silk-clad heralds carrying staffs of solid gold, and a seemingly endless train of camels creates a wave of rumors and awe that precedes you into the city proper. By the time you reach the gates, the rooftops and streets are packed with spectators. There murmurs a low hum of astonishment. You are escorted not to a common caravanserai, but to a district near the city's heart, with quarters prepared for a visiting head of state. The Mamluk Sultan who rules Egypt, Al-Nasser Muhammad, is a shrewd and powerful leader, and he understands immediately that this is no ordinary pilgrim. This is a diplomatic event of the highest order. He sends his emissaries, who formally invite Mansa Musa to the citadel of Cairo, the magnificent fortress palace that looms over the city. And here, in this moment, you witness a fascinating clash of customs and egos. It's a quiet, intensely polite power struggle. The protocol of the Mamluk court is rigid and absolute. Anyone granted an audience with the Sultan must kiss the ground. Before him, it is the expected, unquestioned sign of respect. But when this is explained to Mansa Musa, he flatly refuses. You can imagine the tense silence in the negotiating tent. Musa's argument, relayed through his translator, is simple. He is a king from a long line of kings. More importantly, he is a devout Muslim on a holy pilgrimage. He will prostrate himself for Allah, and Allah alone. To bow to another man, even a great sultan, is out of the question. Chroniclers of the event, like the scholar Al-Amari who would interview people who witnessed it years later, describe a delicate diplomatic dance. The Sultan's officials insist. Musa's advisors hold firm. For a moment, it seems like a major international incident is brewing over a point of etiquette. Finally, a clever solution is proposed. Mansa Musa agrees to perform the prostration, but with the public understanding and declaration that he is doing so only for God, who has blessed him with the ability to reach this great city and meet its noble ruler. It's a masterpiece of face-saving. The Sultan gets his gesture of respect, and Musa maintains his piety and his royal dignity. With the diplomatic crisis averted, the meeting is a resounding success. The two rulers exchange lavish gifts. Sultan al-Nasser Muhammad presents Musa with magnificent Arabian horses, fine robes, and other treasures of his court. Mansa Musa, in return, gives gold. He gives gifts to the Sultan, to his officials, to his guards, to the scholars he meets. He doesn't just give pouches of gold dust. He gives away the solid gold staffs carried by his heralds as if they were party favors. He establishes a royal residence in Cairo for his months-long stay, and his courtiers and servants fan out into the city's famous markets. And as they do, they carry with them the seemingly bottomless treasury of the Mali Empire. The Cairans watch, their eyes wide with wonder. They have no idea that their economy, one of the most stable and sophisticated in the world, is about to receive a hug so generous, so loving, that it will break its ribs. Your position in this grand procession grants you a unique vantage point. You're not a high-level courtier trapped in diplomatic meetings, nor are you a common soldier stuck on guard duty. You have the freedom to wander, to melt into the labyrinthine streets of Cairo and observe, and what you see is a city drunk on gold. Every Friday, the holiest day of the week, Mansa Musa makes his way to one of Cairo's magnificent mosques for prayer. His journey through the streets is not a simple commute. It's a spectacle of charity. He tosses handfuls of gold dust to the crowds of poor who lined the streets, his arm moving in a steady, rhythmic arc. At first, it's a blessing, a miracle. The people cheer his name, calling him a saint. It's like a fantasy made real. A king so rich he can literally throw money away. But It's not just the king. His entire entourage, 60,000 strong, has been living in the desert for months. They are flush with gold and have a powerful desire for the comforts and luxuries of the world's greatest city. They flood the souk and bazaars, places like the famed Khan el-Ghalili, a sprawling warren of narrow alleys where the air is thick with the scent of cardamom, sandalwood, and roasting lamb. They buy everything: fine Egyptian cotton, damask silks from Syria, intricate metalwork, scholarly books copied by hand, exotic perfumes, and houses to live in during their stay. They don't haggle. Haggling is the lifeblood of these markets, a dance as old as trade itself. But Musa's people simply pay the first price asked. Then they pay double. They are the easiest, most profitable customers anyone has ever seen. You watch a rug merchant, a man whose face is a roadmap of shrewd transactions, tried to sell a fine carpet to one of Musa's officials. The merchant names a high, hopeful price. The official, without blinking, pays it from a heavy leather pouch, spilling gold dust onto the counter to be weighed. The merchant's eyes go wide. The next day, when another Malian comes to his stall, the merchant names a price that is twice as high. It is paid just as quickly. A dangerous thought begins to spread like a fever through the marketplace. These people have no concept of what things should cost. Their supply of money is effectively infinite. This is where the invisible gears of the economy begin to grind and then shatter. Gold, like anything else, gets its value from scarcity. For centuries, the flow of gold into Egypt was a controlled, predictable trickle. Now, a fire hose has been opened. Suddenly, gold isn't scarce at all. It's everywhere. The gold dinar, the standard coin of the realm, starts to lose its power. Think of it this way. If everyone suddenly had $1 million bill, a loaf of bread wouldn't cost a few dollars anymore. It would cost thousands. Your $1 million wouldn't make you rich. It would just make the dollar worthless. This is what you are witnessing in real time. Economists still debate the exact percentage of the devaluation, but contemporary accounts suggest the value of gold in Cairo plummeted by as much as 25% and stayed depressed for more than a decade. See, the consequences ripple outwards from the luxury markets to the food stalls. A baker who used to sell his flatbread for a small copper coin now has to charge $2, because the copper coin is valued against the now cheaper gold. The Cairene palace guard, whose salary is paid in a fixed number of dinars, suddenly finds that his wages can't buy as much food for his family as they could a month ago. The city's wealthy elite, who stored their fortunes in gold, are watching their life savings evaporate. Mansa Musa, in an act of pure piety and generosity, has inadvertently performed a reverse miracle. He has turned gold into something. Khomeini has stumbled into the world's most opulent pothole and dragged an entire nation's economy in with him. The funny thing is, he seems completely unaware of it. He continues his grand tour, visiting scholars, funding the restoration of mosques, and generally being the most popular and most destructive tourist in history. After many months, the great Malian procession finally packs up and continues its journey eastward, leaving Cairo for the final leg to Mecca. A collective sigh of relief seems to emanate from the Sultan's treasury officials. But for the average person on the street, the real trouble is just beginning. You stay behind for a while, a quiet observer in a city nursing a brutal economic hangover. The party is over. The wealthy guests have gone home, but they left behind a mess that can't just be swept away. The gold remains, a glittering poison. in the city's veins. Asterisk, the first thing you notice is that the vibrant energy of the markets is soured. The cheerful dance of haggling has been replaced by a tense, uncertain shuffle. Merchants are genuinely terrified. How do you price your goods when the value of the money you accept is actively dissolving in your hands? The man who sold from India now stares at his pouch of gold diners, knowing that by the time he can arrange his next shipment, this gold might not be enough to cover the cost. Prices for everyday goods, bread, oil, lentils, have skyrocketed. Not because the items are scarcer, but because the gold used to buy them is now fundamentally less trustworthy. It's like trying to build a house on a foundation of sand, and everyone is suddenly aware that the tide is coming in. Asterisk, you see the long-term consequences unfold in slow motion. The historian Alumari, writing about this period more than a decade later, would note that the value of gold was still depressed all those years after Musa's visit. He essentially caused a full-blown, decade-long recession through an act of overwhelming generosity. His charitable giving had the same economic effect as a dragon setting the treasury on fire, just with much better intentions. This wasn't a temporary blip. It was a fundamental shock to the system. The Mamluk Sultanate, one of the most powerful and stable states in the world, was staggered. Asterisk, the soldiers in the citadel are grumbling. Their fixed salaries can no longer stretch to the end of the month. The government scribes and administrators, the bedrock of the Mamluk bureaucracy, are in the same boat. This is dangerous. An unpaid army and an underpaid government are the ingredients for political instability. Meanwhile, a new class of people is thriving. The moneylenders. They are the only ones who understand how to navigate this chaotic new world. They deal not in gold, but in debt, in contracts, in silver dirhams, and in the timeless currency of desperation. You might see a once proud merchant quietly visiting a moneylender's stall, trading his family's golden heirlooms now devalued for a loan in silver at an exorbitant rate, just to keep his business afloat. Asterisk, economic historians still puzzle over the precise mechanics of this crisis, debating how such a sophisticated economy could be so profoundly derailed by a single, massive injection of capital. It was, in many ways, the first documented case of large-scale, externally caused hyperinflation, and it was happening in an era without printing presses or complex financial derivatives. It was pure, raw supply and demand. Mansa Musa had brought a literal mountain of supply to a market that was calibrated for a molehill. Asterisk. The quirkiest outcome is what happens to other precious metals. Silver, which had always been the poorer cousin to gold, suddenly becomes the star of the show. It's stable. It's predictable. People begin hoarding silver dirhams, trusting them more than the glittering diners. In the markets, you start to hear a new kind of transaction, one that would have been unthinkable just a year ago. Merchants offering a discount if you pay in silver instead of gold. The entire financial hierarchy has been turned on its head. The city, and by extension the entire region of Egypt, Syria, and the Hejaz, is forced to relearn the very definition of wealth. And it is a painful, drawn-out education. All the while, Mansa Musa is in Mecca, fulfilling his spiritual duties, praying in the holy sites, completely oblivious to the economic chaos he has left in his wake. He has performed his duty as a pious Muslim, and in his mind, all is well. The news of the chaos hasn't reached him yet, but it will. And his reaction will be just as extraordinary as the act that caused it. Asterisks, the sacred duties are complete. Mansa Musa has performed the rites of the Hajj, circling the Kaaba, praying on the plains of Arafat. He is now a Haji, a title of great respect. His spiritual quest is fulfilled, but the long road home awaits. As his caravan retraces its steps back towards Cairo, you notice a distinct shift in the atmosphere. The mood on the way out was one of triumphant, almost reckless, generosity. The mood now is more professional. News travels fast on the ancient trade routes, carried in the minds of merchants and pilgrims. Whispers from Egypt have reached the king's ears. Whispers of economic chaos, of a city turned upside down. By his visit, upon re-entering Cairo, the welcome is noticeably cooler. The cheering crowds are gone, replaced by wary, watchful eyes. The city is still reeling. The king and his advisors are now confronted with the full picture of the damage. They hear first-hand accounts from merchants whose businesses are on the verge of collapse and from officials whose treasury has been severely devalued. For the first time, you see a flicker of concern on Mansa Musa's face. He is not a conqueror who destroys cities with fire and sword. He is a pious man who has inadvertently wrecked an economy with kindness. It's arguably a much more embarrassing legacy. It's one thing to be remembered as a fearsome warrior. It's another to be remembered as the guy who was so bad with money. He broke a whole country. And so, he makes a decision that is, in its own way, just as shocking as his initial generosity. He decides to fix it. He realizes that he put too much gold into the economy. The only logical solution, then, is to take it out. So Mansa Musa, the wealthiest man alive, a king whose homeland produces more gold than the rest of the known world combined, starts borrowing money. You have to pause and appreciate the sheer, beautiful absurdity of this moment. He goes to the very same Cairene moneylenders who had been profiting from the crisis he created, and he asks for loans. Imagine being one of those lenders. A man comes to you whose camel train is still laden with more gold than you will see in 10 lifetimes. And he says, "I'd like to open a line of credit." The negotiations must have been a masterclass in controlled bewilderment. He borrows back the very gold he had so freely given away, but this time, he does so at an astronomical interest rate. He is, in effect, paying people to take his own money back. This act is the subject of endless debate among historians. Was it an act of profound remorse and responsibility, a king trying to undo the harm he had caused? Or was it a brilliantly pragmatic piece of economic policy? His advisors had likely explained to him that if gold became worthless in Cairo, the world's most important market, then the value of the gold still sitting in his vaults back in Mali would also plummet. To save the Egyptian economy was to protect his own fortune. It was the 14th century equivalent of a massive corporate bailout, orchestrated by the very person who caused the crash. You can almost picture the scenes in the market. Musa's officials, who months before were casually overpaying for everything, are now meticulously weighing gold dust, signing contracts, and agreeing to repayment terms that would make a modern loan shark blush. They become the single biggest borrowers in the city. The effect is immediate. By creating a sudden, massive demand for gold, its value begins to creep back up. Scarcity, or at least the illusion of it, is reintroduced to the market. The fire hose of gold has been turned off, and a very expensive sponge is now being used to mop up the flood. It is a staggering feat. The first and perhaps only time in history a single man has intentionally manipulated and stabilized a foreign economy on such a scale. He single-handedly deflates the bubble he created. He leaves Cairo for the final time not just as a king, but as a central bank of one. The caravan that heads back into the desert is different. It is still wealthy, but it is also laden with something new, debt. It's a somber, thoughtful procession now, one that has learned a very public and very expensive lesson in the delicate invisibles of supply and demand. Asterisk, asterisk. Asterisk, the long journey home is a different kind of challenge. The desert is no less harsh, the sun no less punishing, but the spirit of the caravan has been fundamentally altered. The boisterous, freewheeling energy of the outbound trip has been replaced by a more focused, almost academic sense of purpose. You notice new faces in the royal retinue. These are not Malian nobles or desert guides. They are men with ink-stained fingers and thoughtful eyes, scholars from Cairo's great universities. There are poets, astronomers, and physicians, all lured from the heart of the Islamic world by the promise of a king's patronage. The camels are still carrying gold, but now, many are also laden with precious books, great leather-bound volumes of law, science, and philosophy, carefully wrapped to protect them from the sand. Asterisk, the most conspicuous of the new additions is a man named Abu Ishaq al-Sahili. He's a poet and an architect from Granada, in far-off Spain, a man accustomed to the refined courtyards and intricate tilework of Andalusia. You can only imagine his culture shock, finding himself in the middle of the Sahara with a king who had recently tried to pay for everything with a solid gold fire hose. Musa had met him in Mecca and was so taken with his intellect and vision that he essentially made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Al-Sahili is now the designated visionary, the man tasked with translating the king's newfound ambition into physical form. Mansa Musa didn't just go on a pilgrimage. He went on the world's most extravagant shopping spree for talent. Asterisk, when you finally cross back into the Mali Empire, you don't return to the capital of Niani. The king's gaze is fixed on a different city, Timbuktu. Before the Hajj, Timbuktu was a respectable, if dusty, trading outpost on the northernmost bend of the Niger River. It was a place where the desert met the waterway, a functional interchange for salt, gold, and slaves. It was strategically important, but it was not a great city. Mansa Musa, having now seen the grandeur of Cairo, was determined to change that. He saw a lump of clay, and he intended to sculpt a masterpiece. Asterisk, his first and grandest project is a new mosque, the Gingerbread Mosque. He gives the commission to the bewildered Andalusian architect Al-Sahili. You can picture their first planning. Meeting Al-Sahili, used to marble and carved stone, asks for his building materials. He is pointed towards a massive pit of mud mixed with straw and rice husks. This is banko, the traditional building material of the region. To his eternal credit, Al-Sahili does not flee back to Spain. He adapts. He engineers new techniques, using wooden beams to support a roof far larger and a structure far more complex than anything previously attempted with mud brick. He designs a great minaret from which the call to prayer will echo across the desert. And he builds a palace for the king himself, a building so remarkable it becomes known as the Madigu, or the King's Palace. A quirky legend persists that Musa paid the architect around 400 pounds of gold for his work, a fee that would make even modern celebrity architects blush. Asterisk, while the physical city is being remade, its intellectual heart is getting a transplant. Timbuktu was already home to the Sankar Madrasa, a community of Islamic scholars, but Musa supercharges it. He endows it with royal funds and directs the scholars he brought from Cairo to join its ranks. The library explodes with the new books acquired on the journey. It becomes a true university, one of the great centers of learning in the world. Students from across Africa and the Middle East travel there to study law, medicine, theology, and astronomy. the city's reputation begins to shift. For centuries, the name Timbuktu was whispered as a place where you could find gold. Now, it is spoken with reverence as a place where you could find knowledge. Historians still debate whether Musa single-handedly created Tim_UKT, used Golden Age, or simply fanned the embers of a fire that was already beginning to glow. But there is no denying the transformative impact of his vision. He used the fame and the connections from his pilgrimage to put Timbuktu on the map. The city becomes a nexus of commerce and culture. The gold trade still thrives, but now the most valuable commodities are often the manuscripts being bought and sold in the city's libraries, some for prices higher than the slaves in the market. The Hajj that began as a journey of personal faith has ended as an act of national creation. The king who left Mali as a rich ruler has returned as a nation builder, armed with a new understanding that true wealth isn't just something you dig out of the ground. It's something you build, one mud brick and one handwritten book at a time. The final leg of your journey is not a physical one. You are no longer in the desert or the bustling streets of Timbuktu. Instead, you are in the quiet, candlelit workshops of cartographers in places like Majorca, a sun-drenched island in the Mediterranean. Here, in the mid-14th century, the world is being meticulously pieced together on vast sheets of vellum. News, like the fine inks used here, travels slowly but permanently. The stories of Mansa Musa's hedge, which have been circulating in the merchant houses of Venice and Genoa for years, are now more than just wild rumors from the south. They have become established fact, a piece of data to be added to the map of the known world. You watch as a master mapmaker. A man like Abraham Cresques works on what will become the famous Catalan Atlas of 1375. This is not a map in the modern sense, with clean lines and uniform scales. It is a work of art, a strategic document, and a storybook, all in one. It's filled with drawings of kings on their thrones, strange beasts in distant lands, and trade routes marked by tiny, marching camels. The stories that merchants brought back from Cairo to Liz of a king who could devalue gold itself have reached this workshop. The cartographer has to decide how to represent this mysterious, impossibly wealthy kingdom south of the Sahara. A simple label saying Mali Empire will not do. The story is too big, too spectacular. So, he dips his brush in gold leaf. In the space representing West Africa, a region previously depicted as a vague, empty quarter sometimes labeled here lions, he paints a king. The king wears a golden crown and sits on a golden throne. He holds a golden scepter in one hand, and in the other, held up for all the world to see, he offers a massive, gleaming nugget of pure gold. This isn't a subtle depiction. It's the medieval equivalent of a giant, flashing neon sign that says, "All the gold is here." Beneath the image, a caption identifies the figure. This black lord is called Musa Mali, Lord of the Negroes of Guinea. So abundant is the gold which is found in his country that he is the richest and most noble king in all the land. This single image, copied and referenced in subsequent maps, becomes the definitive European perception of West Africa for the next century. Historians still debate the true impact of this single image on the course of history, but its influence is undeniable. For European rulers, particularly the Portuguese, who were just beginning to cautiously probe the African coastline, this was not just a map. It was a treasure map. The vague desire for trade and a sea route to India was now paired with a very specific, glittering target. The myth of Prester John, a lost Christian king in the East, was fading. The very real, documented story of Mansa Musa, the king of gold, was taking its place. The irony is profound. Musa's legacy within his own empire was the creation of a center of learning. He built Timbuktu into a city of scholars and books. He is remembered there for his piety, his patronage, his mosques. But in Europe, he became famous for the one thing he seemed to care about the least: the raw monetary value of his gold. He became a legend for his almost clumsy display of wealth in Cairo, an act he spent a fortune trying to undo. His true, carefully constructed legacy of cultural and intellectual development was almost entirely invisible to the outside world. They didn't see the libraries. They only saw the giant golden nugget he held in his hand on their maps. It's a quiet reminder that history is often not the story of who we are, but the story that others choose to tell about us. His journey, which began as a private act of faith, had unintentionally redrawn the world's mental map, sparking a hunger for gold that would eventually lead European ships down the coast of Africa, changing the fate of both continents forever. The dust from his great caravan has long since settled, mingling with the desert sands. The echo of 60,000 voices has faded into the wind, but the story, the legend of the Golden King, remains. A quiet, shimmering testament to a man who, on his way to find God, accidentally showed the world the meaning of wealth. For better and for worse, and now, as our long journey together comes to a close, the story begins to soften and fade, like a distant caravan disappearing over a dune at dusk. The vibrant clamor of the Cairo markets recedes, leaving only a gentle, peaceful quiet. The blinding glare of the Sahara sun melts into a soft, restful twilight. All the details, all the names and the dates can drift away now. They are not important anymore. What remains is just the feeling of a long story told, a gentle rhythm that has carried you across deserts and through time. There is nothing left to do now but to let the last images dissolve into the darkness behind your eyelids. The weight of the gold, the dust of the road, the hum of the ancient cities. Let it all become light. Let it all go. You are safe. You